Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you all for being here today. For those who I have not met, I'm Gary Green. I'm president here at Forsyth. And on behalf of our faculty, our staff, our board, and especially our students, I want to welcome all of you to the SciTech today. SciTech is in its 6th year at the college. We have had about 35 different events like this with leaders from throughout our community, throughout our state, and nationally in the whole science and technology arena. So it's been a great, successful series for us. We've had about 3,000 people participate here, in addition to those that have joined us and have viewed these events online. So this has been a great, successful effort for SciTech to connect our community, our local community, our state, our national community, with some of the great things that are going on in science and technology across this community and across the state. And we're very honored to have another very special guest with us here today. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to NC Biotechnology from the Biotech Center, who's going to introduce our speaker, I think. You're going to do it? Either.
Just giving me a microphone, but thank you, Dr. Green. And today I am very pleased to introduce you to the President, CEO of the North Carolina Biotechnology Center, Doug Edgeton. And Judy and I are pleased to have you back home. Welcome home to the Piedmont Triad. And Doug, since you came to North Carolina from Alabama, I just want to take a quick poll here, because for those of you who may or may not know, Alabama is home to the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. So I just want to take a quick poll here. How many of you all have ever used Google Earth or Google Maps? So they provide, that provides a pretty unique perspective, correct? So if you think about it, when you're up close to the Earth, it's flat. But yet, when you're in outer space, it's round. So I think it's just all about perspective. And to just tie that in with Doug, I think that Doug brings a new perspective as the new CEO for the North Carolina Biotechnology Center, and especially a perspective that understands opportunities for regional growth. So thank you. As you will see from his bio, if you'll open up your folder that's been prepared, Doug joined the North Carolina Biotechnology Center in 2012 as Senior Vice President for Financial Planning and Development, and in September of 2014, he was named the President and CEO. Soon after joining the center, Doug became instrumental in mission-critical activities for the center, working with a committee and experienced business executives chaired by former Glaxo Wellcome Chairman Bob Ingram that examined the center's operations at the legislature's request. After that review, the General Assembly actually increased the center's state appropriation. And most recently, as CEO, Doug led our organization with the support of community and industry leaders to successfully preserve the Biotech Center's funding in the state budget. Doug was well equipped to take on this role with his experience in healthcare, research park development, business administration, and community service. And as I noted, he brings a fresh new perspective to our center that I believe is going to be vital to our future growth in North Carolina. He is always trying to see the next big thing. Judy and I can attest to that. And I know that you will enjoy hearing what he has to share today about how the Piedmont Triad fits into the big picture. So join me in welcoming.
There we go. Good afternoon. I'll try not to be too loud. It sounds loud, but I thank you for letting me be here today to talk to you about what's really going on in North Carolina and what's going on around the world, and how important the work that you're doing is and how that fits into what the needs are for the world. What you'll see this talk is a lot about is feeding, fueling, and healing the world. And it's what the state of North Carolina can bring to that and what the Piedmont Triad can bring to that and how you fit into that. Because what will happen is you will see We have an opportunity in this world right now, which is probably already existing for years, but we have a lot of things that are happening to the world, and I will see if I can click to the next slide. For example, just to give you big picture, 11 million pounds of food is eaten in this world every minute, and there is an opportunity right there. Every day, 275,000 new people come into this world, and every day, about 14.1 million people are given the bad news that they have some form of cancer. And so what do these big picture things have to do with what we're talking about today? And really, population growth, food demand, and the spread of disease are challenging to the world's resources right now. We just don't have the ability. I was in a meeting with people from Homeland Security, and they're interested in food and food safety. Every day in the world, 25,000 people somewhere on this planet die from starvation. Every day in this world, we have less and less farmland available to grow the crops on. But by 2030, 2035, they're expecting almost a doubling of the world population. So we have to figure out how to grow food for that population growth on land. The farmable land in the world is only about the size of South America. So if you took all the land that's available in the world to grow crops on, it equals about the size of South America. Hasn't changed in 100 years, and so what we have to look at are what are the inputs required to grow food on that amount of space with maybe less water. So we're going to continue to work on these problems, and everybody in this room I know will be doing something at some point in time related to that. But what is the secret to it? The secret, we think, I did it, I knew I was going to touch that thing. But the secret really is biotechnology. And what we will use, I will use the word biotechnology or life sciences. Biotechnology is a little more narrow, life sciences is a broader terminology. But biotechnology holds a lot of the keys to how we address those issues in the world. And let me just give you a big definition of biotechnology. It is the use of living systems to solve problems. And so if you think about products that come to market that came from living systems, a vaccine is an example of that. So when you get your flu shot, that came from a living system, either through an egg or something like that. But right now in North Carolina, we've got a company that also does some biotechnology with spider silk. And I would have never thought of this, but spider silk is stronger than any thread that is made. And they actually have learned how to put that into bulletproof vests, which help our soldiers. And what the issue is how do you scale that up for world population of people who need bulletproof vests and other things like that. Lightweight material, but stronger than Kevlar. The other things that I look at are crops that can thrive in drought situations. We look at the crop situation in America. In North Carolina, we have one of the most diverse crop systems in the world. In the United States, we have the second most diverse plant growth in the country, behind California. So we grow about 80 food crops for the world. But what we really need are things that can do that with less water, put more yield out per acre, that don't have the pest problems. And so the farmers in our state can produce more food per acre, and that will help all of us. So there's a real opportunity in here, and the opportunity rests between where the innovative solutions and high impact and economic growth, because each one of the things I just told you about has a potential for high impact in our world to create energy and medicine and agricultural products, but that will also turn into jobs and wealth and development opportunities. And what you'll see around in the Triad is this has been going on for years, particularly in the medical side. So the world of biotechnology is pretty complex. So if it were easy, everybody would do this. It's not that easy. It's pretty complicated and it's counterintuitive. And I'll tell you why. So here are just 3 examples of things that go on in this industry where people are trying to fill a need, a company needs to expand, or there's a university and somebody has invented something in their lab and they think, gosh, this has potential. How do I get that to the market? And on the right is this hodgepodge of things that occurs to people who are trying to do these three things. So, you're trying to fill an industry need, but you've got to get workforce. And that's, I think, a lot of what we're here for, is to get the workforce. You got the company needing to expand. Well, in fact, filling an industry need, there's a long timeline for most products in the life sciences that takes somewhere between 10 and 15 years. Most computer-based applications are 2 to 3 years. So when you start looking at the difference in scale of life sciences and biotechnology, of what it requires to get to market, there's a lot of patient money required along the way. And a lot of times people want their returns faster, and so it's a difficult thing. So we look for places where you can help with that. The university market going to research, is high risk because it's so early. When you get an idea that comes out of the bench, somebody's lab, then you go, okay, this really looks like it could maybe be very important for the world, but you have to go through numerous tests and different systems of life to try to see if it will actually translate into humans. And so what we try to do at the Biotech Center is take those same problems and organize them. And we have in our organization experts in business, experts in almost all aspects of science and medicine. And what we don't actually have in our building, we work with around the state and around the country. We bring people in as consultants and help us straighten up this hodgepodge of things that was on the last slide, and try to make it much more organized and faster, because what we really want is North Carolina to be one of the few states that can do this faster than anybody else. If we can translate science to the marketplace faster than anybody else or other states, we will have ample opportunities for everybody in the state to be involved in this endeavor. So life sciences have continued to grow in the state. It is a very important element of what we are trying to do for replacing jobs that we've lost over the years. And so the Biotech Center, actually, we think of it as a hub. And if you started with funding ideas and then connecting resources and creating jobs, these are the things that we spend our time trying to do. So when we look for the funding opportunities, what we really look for are places where gaps occur in funding. So somebody may be able to get a grant from the federal government that would help them take their technology further, but they may need a little bit of money to do a few independent tests to see if it will work or not, to make their grant application stronger. We have grant programs for that. They may need a loan as a startup company just to get started, and we have money for that. And I'll tell you about a few examples here in a minute. So what we try to do is find places to plug resources in where they are most needed, where other people can't do it. Because I tell people a lot of times, startup companies will go through their credit cards and their mom and dad's money and some other things like that, and then they run out of options. And so what we try to do at the Biotech Center is for those ideas that have real commercial application that we have evaluated independently, we look through it and we say, okay, this really does have potential for moving beyond just the startup stage. So we will try to find ways to help plug money in at the early stage, so that the company can continue to what we call a burn rate. They will burn through cash pretty quickly, but they have to pay their bills and they have to buy supplies. So I'll tell you a story about just a couple of Triad examples. This is a company that you may or may not have heard of, but do you have a cat or a dog? Show of hands. Ever try to give them medicine? It's really hard to do. Especially my dog. He likes peanut butter. He'll use that, but that's about it. So this company, Piedmont Animal Health, has come up with a product that is a tasty treat for the animals that helps them take their medicine. So in 2004, they were just getting started and they needed money to get started. They went through our loan program, and our loan program said, this is really an important piece of business that could go on in the state of North Carolina. What can we do? So we had a small business research award, and we gave them a $150,000 loan, which they started working on. That allowed them to pull together the necessary preliminary data to be able to prove what they were doing. They actually took that idea further down the road, and they've doubled their employees. They're projecting to have sales of about $175 million over the next 5 years. So they've actually licensed this product to 4 different companies. And so it's that scaling up to the world market that can be very, very helpful to everybody here, because those jobs that they have, I think it's 44 employees now, would not exist if this company had not decided to take a risk on starting a company, which is not an easy thing to do, and said, we'll plug away and do what we have to do to make this successful. Came to the Biotech Center. The Biotech Center gave them a lot of advice and helped them move along to down the road. And so they are now at a point where there's a very successful endeavor in this area. We connect industry and academia and government, and so we're at the connecting resources part. And really, as much as money is important, which is it's important. I mean, everybody has to have it to buy all the things that they need to get their equipment and things going through their labs. But also knowing people in the space is very, very important. So we try as we can, because we have offices in all across the state. We have 5 offices, and what we try to do is know all the players in the space. And so what we really hope we can do is make intelligent connections for people. And so we do events and we do programs, and we do one-on-one connections with people and venture capitalists, and one-on-one connections to universities, to industry, and things like that. So I'll give you an example here in the Triad where we try to connect people. I don't know if any of you, have y'all ever been to Triad Bio Night? Okay, a couple of folks, so you know a little bit about it. So in 2005, the Piedmont Triad office, which was the first office of the Biotech Center outside of RTP, and it was in downtown Winston-Salem, where it still is, in the research park. But their focus is on the whole Triad, and they put together an idea. Dr. Green was instrumental, I think, in helping to pull this together, where they said, we need to get the community, the life sciences, biotechnology community of the Triad, excuse me, I'm still translating between the 2 places, but the Triad together, so people will know each other and be able to interact with each other and be able to share information as they come across it. And so it's really important in an industry to have a network. And so this started off with an idea that Gary and Gwen Riddick, who used to run the office, and now Nancy Johnson runs that office. And it was probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 people worked on it, and about 100 people came that year. Well, the Triad team facilitated with dozens of volunteers to make that happen. And in 2014 now, with hundreds of people involved in pulling this together, Nancy and Judy coordinate pulling this event together every year. We are starting to see more and more people come to the event. So they had 400 people. Last year, we had one of the lead people from the Department of Health and Human Services, and then the year before, Bob Ingram, former CEO of GlaxoSmithKline, spoke. And we give prizes to people in certain areas of science, of academia, and of public service. And so these prizes have become pretty important recognition for key players in this area, because one of the great things is when you recognize the players in the area, you can start to make these connections. And when you see that these people are leading the area, it's really important, and I'm sure every winner would be glad to talk to you at some point in time. If you had an idea, they would probably share some of their expertise with you. And so we continue to grow that program, and we think that's a great way to bring the community together to focus on the achievements of life sciences in this area. At the top of the circle, we have the creation of jobs. And training the best workforce is very, very, very important. We, in the Biotechnology Center, help recruit companies from around the world to the state of North Carolina. We just did a trip where we met with people in Copenhagen and Germany and Barcelona. And the folks in every one of those communities said, we want to expand. All of them have a presence here in North Carolina. We want to expand in North Carolina. What we are most concerned about, it's not land, it's not buildings, it's not capital, it's workforce. It's the trained workforce, people who are ready to go to work. So you may have heard south of Raleigh is a place called Clayton, and Clayton is home to Novo Nordisk. Novo Nordisk just announced a $2.8 billion, $2 billion investment in the state of North Carolina. They will hire another 700 people to work on their diabetes medications and delivery systems. When we were talking to the CEO over in Denmark, he said, we're really worried about where we're going to get 700 trained people. So programs that are going on here, programs that are going on across the state are going to be key to us maintaining this global posture that North Carolina has taken. You may or may not know this, but in the United States, there are probably 3 major hubs for the life sciences. Boston, everybody knows Boston. San Francisco, everybody knows San Francisco. North Carolina. North Carolina just got ranked by Jones Lang LaSalle as the second hottest environment for growing life sciences jobs in the country. So we are very fortunate that many years ago, a lot of work went into the idea that this industry was going to be very important to our state in replacing traditional industries like textiles and tobacco and manufacturing. And they recognized with the university's strength that we have the opportunity between our universities, our community colleges, and the local communities to grow this important sector for North Carolina. North Carolina has always had inventive and creative people. You know, I look back and say, gosh, the Wright brothers flew their plane here, and there's been hundreds and hundreds of products that we all use every day invented here in North Carolina. And a lot of the medications and things that you get, you'd be surprised. If you got a flu shot this year, I can promise you it probably came within 100 miles of here, because that's where the vaccine capital of the world is. So, another great story about the job creation side. Etics, do you all know Etics? Very prominent local group that has been, like many successful startups, a 10-year story. It's taken about 10 years to get to the point where they're at today. But they take protein like your fingernail and hair and things like that, and they can turn that into wound healing, things that will help stop bleeding, keep you from developing infection, all the way into things like bone and regeneration of that kind of materials that you need for skeletal growth. Back, 7 or 8 years ago, we made a loan to Etics of $150,000 when they were just getting started. And that loan was to help them be able to prove what they were thinking they had was really marketable. They used that loan, and then we recently made a second loan to them, and they've expanded here in downtown Winston, and they've scaled up their manufacturing and they've hired more people. The great thing about the story is the technology was started here, it was developed here, it was marketed here, it was all the people who put it together work here and live here. They're your neighbors, they're your friends. And that's a great story for North Carolina, because the products they have will actually help, and they're working with the Department of Defense and others, but will help the soldiers on the battlefield right now if they get wounded and things like that. There's an opportunity for us to have an impact on things that are happening 1,000, 2,000 miles away. And so they expanded in downtown Winston. This is kind of an interesting story, because where they expanded, I don't know if that slide, no, I'll go back, okay. Where they expanded is in the Targacept building. So people were really upset when Targacept didn't have the success they needed in their clinical trials. And so they scaled down and they shut down their space, but they had great space. And when you know you've got a good ecosystem is when one company doesn't make it, but another one can walk right in and fill that space up and start producing things in there. And that's what happened with this space. Etics was going up as Targacept was going down. And this industry is just like any other industry. You will have pits and valleys. Things will go down, things will go up. But it's very much driven by success in the clinic and success with clinical trials. So Etics is now in the upswing, and they're doing very, very well, and they've grown, and they've now at 100 and, I don't remember, about 100 employees. I think it's somewhere in that neighborhood from when they started, because I knew the guys, it was like 3. Yeah, so pretty good over a short period of time, really, in life sciences. So we've kind of talked about the whole circle, the loans, the grants, the infrastructure, networking, licensing, coaching. Coaching is really important, because many times the people who invent the things are not really the best business people to take it to the marketplace. So when you get a room full of venture capitalists who are saying, hit me really hard with something that I want to put my money on. You need $30 million. You've got to really be able to convince me. Well, a lot of the people that do these inventions are not the right people, or they're not ready to do that. So we have a team of people that helps coach them up for how to do that. So we will then take them either to Boston or New York and sometimes to California to go to where the venture capitalists are at. Interestingly enough, that's been very, very successful. The company will pay for the trip, and we will get 7 or 8 companies, and we will go sit with venture capitalists for a day or two and do pitches all day long. And that's led to a lot of term sheets, which has led to a lot of money come into the state of North Carolina. I'll tell you more about that in a second. And then we recruit companies. We help bring almost any of the life sciences companies that you've seen recruited in the state in the last 4 or 5 years. Probably 10 years. It's been the result of work that's been going on between the Department of Commerce, the North Carolina Biotechnology Center, and the university system. So we've all worked together to help create the environment where companies want to come to. It's had a statewide impact. This is what this looks like. Each one of those dots is a company. There are about 600 companies in North Carolina. The blue dots are where we have regional offices. That's boots on the ground who know the players in the community and know what's going on, because each community has different resources and different natural assets that they can use to grow companies. Wilmington, for example, you might guess is marine biology, marine biotech. We don't know much about the ocean. We actually don't know about a lot of the medicines and the foodstuffs that can grow in the ocean. In fact, we don't know about the energy that can be produced in the ocean, but when you think of things like red tide, if you've ever heard of that, it's an algae bloom. It's very poisonous. It kills everything. But what it is it's a massive amount of energy that gets released in like 4 hours. It'll just grow very quickly. So what people are working on right now is how do you take that red tide bloom and turn that into energy that might be something you'd use in your car. So we are in Asheville. We have a diversity of plant life there, natural product plant life for medications and things like that. And they're really popular in the brewing industry now. In fact, that fermentation science, I thought it was a joke at first, but no, it's the real thing. I mean, this is very strong science, and they are very dedicated to it in Asheville, which is now like the #2 boutique micro craft brewing city in the country. In fact, they've got a couple of more big breweries that are looking at locating there because of this boutique situation they've got there. We've got the Triad office where you all are working every day to make things happen, and a lot of it's in regenerative medicine, a lot of it's in nanotechnology, and we've got out in the east in Greenville we have a lot of crop science, a lot of activities with East Carolina, and in Charlotte there's a lot going on with the actual human nutrition and what the financial world can bring to this sector. So this is growing. If you had looked at this chart 15 years ago, there would have probably been a handful of dots. Let's see if the pointer works. Oh, darn. I did it wrong. Not a pointer. Okay. Go back. There we go. You would have seen a handful of dots there and a handful of dots around Winston-Salem and maybe one dot out in the Asheville area. It has grown tremendously in the last 10 years. So we're seeing the benefit of an organized approach to not only helping companies get started, but recruiting companies into the state and to having the workforce that's trained and ready to go to fill this need. And we're clickless. Let me see if I can. Yeah. Well, I broke it. Let's try that. See, it's a non-technology person. I bring in the high-powered skills now.
Yeah.
Sure, I can talk around it. That's fine. I can. In fact, I can.
I'll work on
You work on that, and I'll work. There's the clicker, and I'll just pick up where I was at. So, when you look at the stats of what's going on across North Carolina, we're really picking up steam here. If you actually could see the next slide, you would see that we have over 600 companies now in the state of North Carolina that are called life sciences companies. Another 2,500 companies or so support the life sciences companies. So about 61,000 people are directly employed in the life sciences in those 632 companies. The average salary in life sciences is $81,000 a year. So very important to know that's almost double the average wage in North Carolina. So these salaries are very, very good jobs. They are high paying, they're challenging, they're great opportunities. So that industry is contributing $73 billion a year to the economy of our state. $73 billion. Second only to agriculture and growing very quickly. So when you look at the taxes that are generated from this industry, it's about $1.7 billion a year of state and local taxes. So as this industry has grown, it is adding to the wealth of the state, it is adding to the benefits the state has to offer people, and we're still stuck, okay? Okay, that's fine. And so you'll see as this is growing, there's wonderful chances for people because these jobs are very, very nice. In addition to the state, we have one of the other charts you're not seeing is we have a great university system, and that university system has helped bring a lot of the companies here. It has brought a lot of interest to the state. It has brought world recognition to what we're doing. The combined NIH funding that comes into the universities is over $1 billion a year. We have 7 research parks spread across the state, and a fairly significant one here that I know a little bit about. Right, 2 actually, yeah, 2, that's right. The one downtown Winston I know a lot about from my background, and then worked very closely with the folks over in Greensboro to create the joint campus. So we are very blessed to have resources like that. We have, gosh, I have to put my glasses on because this is so small. So this is one thing biotechnology can solve too. But 16 university campuses, 36 private universities, 3 tier 1 research universities in our state, which is very impressive for a state of our size. And we have 10 tech transfer offices. So as the ideas are generated at the universities, these people are responsible for getting the patents filed on them and getting them licensed to companies or to growing companies from them. In terms of workforce, we are very fortunate in that our workforce program, a lot of it is with the community college system, where you have 59 total offices, really 58 campuses and 1 administrative office, spread across 100 counties in North Carolina, with 61,000 jobs being needed every year. These programs that are offered in the community colleges are key to these companies being able to hit the ground running, because they want to bring people in who are ready to go and don't need to be trained for a year in-house. They'd like for them to be trained before they hire them. We have the BioNetwork program where there are 4 sites across the state, and this is also part of the element that makes us very attractive to companies that look at North Carolina as the place to come to be successful. So some of the key jobs that are being sought after are lab and diagnostic technicians, medical devices, and research and development jobs. And a lot of those require less training and less experience, and they're in the $45,000 to $50,000 a year range. So these are also great jobs. Coming out of limited training, you can do very well. In the Triad, the story here is pretty interesting. As I mentioned earlier, the Triad office was the first office outside of the Research Triangle Park for the North Carolina Biotechnology Center. That started in 2003. And in 2003, I was doing something else, and I helped pick out the furniture and find the space and all that good stuff. But there were, at that time, a handful of jobs in the life sciences in this area. Today, there are about 9,400 jobs, people directly employed in the life sciences in this area. There are another 243 support companies that work to support jobs in here. So When we create a job, a direct job in the life sciences, that spins off about 4 other jobs for support functions that keep those companies going, whether it be things that catering, events that need food brought in. We've got people who bring the supplies for them to use in the labs. So it's a very lucrative business once you get going. Like a lot of businesses, when you get to scale, you have to have a supply chain to feed it. So this is, are we there? Nope. Okay. All right. Oh, okay. Well, good. I thought I broke it myself. Okay. So one of the other, this other slide, which I'll just tell you, the growth of the life sciences in the state has been impressive. From 2002 to 2012, that's grown 30.9%. The number of jobs in life sciences in our state has grown 30.9%. The non-life sciences jobs in the state grew less than 1%. So compare that to the 2 scales is incredible. In the country, in the United States, the life sciences jobs grew an average of 7.5%. So North Carolina has eclipsed the rest of the country in growth in terms of percentage of jobs added. So almost one in every 4 jobs created has been in the life sciences. So this is always the worst fear, that your slides wouldn't change, but that's okay. I've got it. I got a picture here. I know what I was going to say. When we talk about the Biotechnology Center, we go back to the circle and the hub of what we do to create and help foster the environment, to create the ecosystem that would allow the state to excel in creating the environment that is needed to support life sciences jobs. And it's really, did you get it?
Got it.
Okay. All right. So these are the good slides you missed. Hey. I would repeat them all, but I don't think it's really. So this is what's going on in this area alone. It's very impressive. This is the 30.9%. And so recapping, really, these are the things that the Biotech Center does to help this segment of our state grow. We focus only on life sciences. That's all we work on. So we work in what's called technology-based economic development, and that really is so that North Carolina can be a global leader in life sciences. And we think that it's the way you're going to solve healing, feeding, and fueling the world. So we're committing to helping North Carolina lead the way, and we want the Piedmont Triad to lead that for us. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I can talk for a long time if you want me to, but I think it's probably better for me just to answer questions now. Okay.
I'm good. Yeah. Hi, I'm Russ Reed. I'm with I'm the Executive Director of the National Center for the Biotechnology Workforce. So this is a very, very important lecture for us. And Doug, I just want to thank you for a really illustrative lecture. I mean, it really brought home the importance to the state and also to the region. Yeah. So very, very pleased. But this is the fun part.
Okay, let's go.
So, and the fun part is that you have here a community and part of the college and so forth, and goes beyond the college. But we were talking before the lecture, and we said, well, who is here? So I'm just going to ask some quick questions. Who are you? And first of all, we'd like to know who are staff here. Hands up.
Okay.
Who are faculty here? Hands up. Who are students here? Hands up.
Students win.
Who are people from the community here? Hands up.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Now we're going to get right into the fun part, which is asking questions. It's really excellent that we have Doug here. He's the top guy. So take advantage, ask him a question. Also, he's home here. This is where he started in North Carolina, and we treat our people really well here. You know that. So please, go ahead, ask a question. Hands up.
I would like for him to back up and let these students see those figures.
Okay.
I think it'd be imperative for them because they were just telling me they're majoring in the life science arena, and I think they would be interested in seeing the visual.
61,000 jobs, growing, by the way. We commission a study from the Battelle Institute every 2 years to see how the life sciences have grown in the state. This is up from 2008 to 2011, from 58,000 jobs to 61,000 jobs. And that number, we think, will continue to grow with some of the announcements we've heard recently. Yes, sir.
Doug, while you're on this slide, I mean, that growth is fantastic, but are there some things we can do to create even more scale? You know, in this market, we're talking a lot about a mega site, an auto plant, and all that as job salvation. Are there some ways through biotech we can create scale? And what would they be?
So, yeah, some of the things we face all the time when we talk to companies are, who's going to handle my wastewater? Well, wastewater treatment is a really big deal. It takes chemistry, it takes a lot of knowledge about flow. You've got to be able to do that. And it takes a lot of work. And so the way our state does it right now is the counties actually receive most of the tax money, but local municipalities take care of the wastewater. So one of the issues that I keep hearing from people is, can we come up with a regional approach to managing wastewater? Because the proteins and the phosphorus and other things that are coming out of the vats when they clean them really can be algae producing things if they got into the water stream. So what you want to do is pre-treat that before it goes out. And so wastewater treatment is one thing that I would say. Two is having ready sites. You know, so we've been fortunate. People have been building research parks across our state for the last 10, 15 years. Before, we had very few sites. Now we have sites for people to get started, which is another big deal. The workforce training is probably job one. It is the biggest thing that we have, and it is the strongest thing we have. When we can lead with the programs that we already offer in our state, it really gives us an advantage when we're talking to companies. The other thing that I've noticed is that there's been a big leaning towards bringing veterans in for retraining as they leave the military. So next year and over the next few years, they're expecting 68,000 military personnel to retire in North Carolina. That's in addition to the 750,000 who already live here. So what we want to have are programs that we can bring vets in and let them get trained for working in these new jobs. So a couple of things. We continue to work on the CEO talent piece, and that comes with scale as we have more companies. You know, recently in our area over in Raleigh, there was an announcement by GSK that was laying off about 900 people, and it's actually exceeded that now. And people were saying, what does that mean? I said, that means a bunch of new companies are going to get started. So we've already seen 5 or 6 come out of that crop of people who decided they wanted to stay in North Carolina and do something different. But we need CEO talent. And the other thing we always are hit with is, how do we get venture capital money here to invest in these early stage companies? That's been a real tough nut, but what we figured out how to do is, if we can't bring the venture capitalist here, we'll take our people to the venture capitalist. And so when we've made loans to people, for every dollar we've put out in a loan, that's resulted in over $118 flowing back into the state from other sources. When we've made grants to people, for every dollar we've put out in a grant from the Biotech Center, that's led to $28 coming back into the state from other sources. But those are the key things we're looking at.
Student question. Quiet group. Faculty question.
I'm not a student, but I'll ask one.
You were one time, right?
If I were sitting here as a student, Doug, if I were sitting here as a student, how would I go about getting a job in the biotech sector?
In the biotech center or in the biotech sector? In the sector.
Biotech sector.
Sure, okay. In the sector, and that, you know, we always say there's all these jobs. The biotech center creates about 60 jobs total, 65. But the biotech sector, 61,000. The biotech sector is what we try to help people be prepared for. When my answer to that question is, as you're going through your training program, I'm hoping that you're networking and you're getting a chance to talk to the companies that are local. And that's one of the best ways to get your foot in the door with these companies. Secondly, I think that your career placement offices are very good and very well trained on how to connect you to industry opportunities. And so those are the typical the ways that I would say. There's nothing like going to events and meeting people who are in those companies and having a chance to talk to them and express your interest. almost everybody is anxious to help a student. I don't know many people that aren't. So.
Lucienne, here usually. There we go.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
I talked to a number of people who are in the industry or who are in the biosciences, and one of the major concerns that they have is generally that the rent is relatively high in downtown, like even a incubation center or not center, but incubation area.
Right.
There, the square footage is relatively high. What can be done to address that issue?
So a couple of the research parks have space that they've allocated back for startup companies that is usually much less expensive than if you were trying to rent your own fully outfitted lab. So I know several of them that have already, because of tax credits and things like that, have used that money to make the space more affordable. And it is a matter of scale. If you go to Boston, you'll pay $175, $180 a square foot. If you go to California, you'll pay right about the same. If you go to Raleigh, it's about $70 or so a square foot. So that's what's made us very attractive in this region. You can find things that are anywhere between that $100 and less a square foot range. The other thing to do is when you're starting up a company, is be virtual as long as you possibly can. So there's a lot of the universities will do things with companies to help them run their experiments. So that's another way to leverage what you've got. So.
Questions?
I don't need a mic.
Okay.
So the title of your presentation is what intrigued me to bring my students. And so can you talk about GMOs?
Well, I can, but I'm not the expert, but I guess you're.
Because the drawback for some in the public health arena is that genetically modified organisms is not truly healthy, and the concept to kill pests is also killing us. So could you talk to that some?
Certainly, there is a big controversy, as you've pointed out, in this area. So as you try to, I'll just start with this premise. Every crop that you have has been genetically modified, whether it was modified over 10,000 years or modified by somebody taking a gene snip out and putting a new gene snip in. If you go to Africa today and you ask somebody, do you care if it's a genetically modified crop or not, they say, I want to eat. I need food, and that's what we've got to figure out is how do you grow the world population? There is what I would say, my personal belief, and you can shoot me if you think I'm wrong, but is genetically modified organisms the worst marketing term I've ever heard. It's scary, no one understands what it means, but yet every day over the last probably 25 or 30 years or more, people have had genetically modified crops in the food system. It happens, and it's one of those things that is very controversial. But I don't think that it's what I have seen as evidence, and what I've talked to the scientists working in this space. We're fortunate to have NC State with one of the top ag schools in the world there, and they're saying, show us the evidence that a genetically modified organism has killed anybody or done anything wrong. That's the real issue that they're saying to us. So, but yes.
Is the problem with biodiversity.
Right.
Because if you are generating very quickly, because you're doing it in the lab, species that are a lot more resistant, soon they are going to overpower all the other species, right. And the biodiversity is lost.
Right.
And then we already know that when that happens is a problem. Because it can be resistant for that time,
right.
But then later there's always something that comes up, and then everything is gone.
Right.
So for me, it's not that it's a problem that you're eating something that is genetically modified, because as you said, since we started agriculture,
right.
We've been modifying it.
Right.
The problem is how fast we're doing it,
right.
that all the other species cannot adapt to that. And then we lose biodiversity, and then we go for big trouble.
Right. Ever since animal husbandry and crop husbandry came into being, we have been changing the diversity of the planet. I don't argue with that at all, because once the Mayans started breeding selective grains that we now call corn, it was a little bitty flake of, looked like an oat, but after successful manipulation and crossbreeding, they created corn. And now if you go into areas where they just plant acre and acre and acre of corn, you lose the biodiversity, no doubt. And that is part of the issue of how do we manage the world's resources to maintain areas for biodiversity, but also areas for crop growth. How do you not overfish in the oceans when there's a huge demand for a certain kind of fish and all of a sudden it gets depleted? The one thing I think is nature is very resilient, and if we leave things alone for a while, we can sort of help return things to a little more of a normal state. But normal is changing all the time. It is constantly evolving. So I don't know that there's an easy answer to it. I do not see that as an easy answer. But when you have a whole forest planted with just pine trees, because we need pine pulp and all the products that come out of pine trees, then you've lost your oaks and your hickories and all the other things too. So it is really a question of how do you manage the world's finite resources. Some land is better for growing crops on, and some land is better for growing forest. And so we have to recognize that opportunity as well. Don't have an easy answer, but tough question.
Final question?
I was wondering, does the depletion of natural resources help to create jobs and ideas, or does it help you to create an answer to solve it?
I think that where we start from is the answer to solve the depletion. When things are, when a farmer is trying to take an acre of land, what they look for is what's the yield they can produce off that land. So one of the problems this year is way too much water. It's killing the farmers in the state right now. One of the problems a few years ago was drought. Then before that, it was a certain insect of whichever crop you're looking for. So people are constantly, because people are creative and inventive, they go, how do I solve that problem? And so I think we've got scientists who are working in the lab out of a true desire to say, how do we make this more productive? If we're going to double the world's population over the next 30 or 40 years, and we can only grow land, we only have this much land to grow crops on. You got the Colorado River that doesn't even flow to the state of California anymore. It's dried up before it gets there because we're pulling off all the water. So somebody sat in the lab and they said, wouldn't it be great if I could figure out how to grow this crop without having to have as much water? And so those are things they're looking for. So they're trying to solve a problem. And I think it is also, the old saying, every problem is an opportunity. And so I think that's really what's come about. So I hope that helped.
Okay. It's my pleasure to introduce Alan Murdock, who's the Vice President of Economic Workforce Development, to officially thank Doug Edgeton, our speaker today at SciTech.
Oh, thank you.
Another round for Doug. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go ahead. Okay.
I have a much greater appreciation for spiders now.
Okay.
If anybody needs some, I got plenty in my basement.
So they figured out how to take that silk and make silkworms produce spider silk. So that's biotechnology at work, right?
On behalf of the National Center for Bioworkforce, headed up by Russ Reed, and housed here for SciTech and the North Carolina Bio Network, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.